if I was this guy who was working a job and paycheck to paycheck, I didn't want my wife to work because I wanted her to take care of the kids and everything else, then I would be spending every waking moment that I had available to me, like learning a new skill. Okay. And whatever that skill was, content.
Welcome to the My Wife Quit Her Job podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have Ryan Pineda on the show. Now, Ryan started his journey in the real estate industry back in 2010, only to discover that it wasn't what he wanted to do. So in 2015, he took $10K from his bank account and started flipping houses and made millions of dollars. But that was just the beginning. Since then, he started 6 separate businesses that generate tens of millions of dollars in revenue, and he works less than 30 hours a week running them. He's also amassed over 1 million followers on social media, where he teaches others how to achieve financial freedom. So in this episode, we're going to break down what some of these businesses are and how he's able to manage all of them in such a short period of time. And with that, welcome to the show, Ryan. How are you doing today, man?
What's up, Steve? Happy to be here, man.
Yeah, so I was looking on your website, and I think you got more than 6 things. In fact, it kind of makes me a little dizzy. You got a real estate investing course. I think you got an NFT project.
Yeah.
Your own coin called Tycoin, I think. A business building class, an agency, an accounting agency. You even do a little bit of e-commerce wholesale, an investment group, and a media company in 30 hours a week. How big is your team? Like, how are you able to do all this stuff?
Yeah, I think across all the companies, we're close to, 80 to 100 employees.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we got a lot of people.
I was just going to say, I have problems keeping up with 2 7-figure businesses, let alone the 8 that you have. Are you particularly passionate about one over the other, or do you just kind of like, how does one end up with 8? That's basically what I'm asking.
Yeah. So to back up a little bit, I mean, I never considered myself to be an entrepreneur. In my former life, I was a baseball player. I got drafted by the Oakland A's back in 2010. So
nice.
I was mainly just focused on being a great baseball player. And I kind of fell into entrepreneurship out of necessity because I had to work during the off seasons. I was in the minor leagues making $1,200 a month. Like, it was no money. So nobody was going to give me a job either because I was leaving 6 months every year and I had to practice and all this stuff. So I had to become an entrepreneur. So, long story short, I get my real estate license in 2010. Absolutely hate it because I just didn't like working with clients. The commission sucked at that time. Prices were low. It was just tough. So eventually gave that up. Started doing other side hustle stuff. Like, I was a substitute teacher. I had my real first business success flipping couches, actually. And, just
like sofas, you mean?
Yeah, just buying and reselling couches. It was like, It was a thing that I just stumbled upon that, at the peak, I was making about $8,000 a month net doing that. And I was like, dude, this is a great business. So, after doing that for a little bit, I realized, like, okay, I'm not going to flip furniture the rest of my life. Let me find something new. And so I came back to real estate after quitting. And I was like, you know what? Instead of being the agent, what if I was the buyer? Like, I've always been good at finding deals. And so, I started flipping houses. And there's a lot that goes into that. I had to max out my credit cards and all this other stuff. I had to take hard money loans and just really go all in to buy my first deal. And thankfully it worked out, even with all that risk. And, I made $25,000 and, from there I just kept buying more and more houses. And that was how I first became successful. It's how I became a millionaire. And it's what led to all the other stuff because, truthfully, I didn't really want to do it. I'm like, you know what? I can flip houses the rest of my life. Like, this is pretty easy. And, it makes great money. It's an industry that's always going to be around. I'm like, I could do this. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed deal making and other stuff. But, during that time, now I started to get more questions of like people wanting to work with me. Success attracts success. And so, we started a brokerage for agents, even though I didn't like being an agent, because I'm like, look, if we're going to flip all these houses, we might as well like be the brand behind it. And like all these people are going to want to join. So we ended up starting a brokerage called Forever Home Realty that we scaled to 200 agents before I got rid of it. Then a lot of people were asking me about, hey, how do you flip? Can you train me? And I'm like, dude, I do not want to do education, but let me write this book. So I wrote my first book called Flip Your Future back in 2018. and I created my first course and education company, and, through an event, and it was like, all right, this is like, it's fun. But like my bread and butter's actually flipping the homes. So, do that. And then eventually, I'm still having success, and people are like, who's your CPA? Who's your accountant? And I'm like, all right, let me go to my guy and see if he wants to start a business. So we start an accounting firm called TrueBooks. And, so like those were like the first core businesses. Like they just kind of were out of the success from my main business. And then, as I got into social media, I started doing content in 2020. More opportunities started to come about, from influence. And so I started a fund, and we started buying big apartment buildings. Then, I started doing, the NFT project, and it became the number one traded OpenSea or NFT on OpenSea. Like it was crazy, and I've just done a lot of different businesses at this point. And now we train people on, other elements too, general business. We train people how to create content. We just started the media company you were talking about, where we produce content for entrepreneurs. Like, so, basically every business I've ever started came from demand that I already knew existed. Like people kept asking me for it. It's like, dude, when people keep telling you they want to give you money, you're just like, all right, fine. Let me build this.
What's funny is you originally didn't like being a real estate agent because you hated clients. And it seems like almost all the things that you do involve client work, right?
But there's a big difference. So let me say, I still don't like working with clients. I like doing my own thing.
Yeah.
Being like, so my problem with being a realtor was like, they owned you. Like you're a slave to like them, whatever. Right. And you still see it in industries like where that becomes the case. But, in like our coaching programs now, yeah, we have students and clients, but I don't have to like hold their hand, and I'm not their accountability coach. Like, I hop on a call and like they can choose to listen or not. If they don't want to listen, then whatever. I don't care. It's like, you have to be receptive to the information. Now, we do want them to have success because, we understand people do need their hands held. They do need accountability. I'm just not the guy doing it. I have coaches who will do that. So
got it. Okay.
It goes back to the real estate brokerage. I built it to 200 agents. I didn't mind owning the real estate brokerage because I wasn't the broker, holding all these agents' hands. I didn't have to go show houses. If I got a lead, I'd just go give it to an agent, let him deal with it and make some money. I focus on the things I like to do, which are not usually like one-on-one things. And I focus on creating the solutions because those things are needed. I just don't have to be the one to do them.
It seems like in some of the businesses that you mentioned, it was all about like finding the right partner, right? So you had people requesting accounting services. So you went up to your accountant and said, hey, you want to start a business, essentially?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we started.
Is that generally how you operate?
Pretty much. I won't start a business at this point unless we have an operator in place, right? So we got to have an operator because I'm not going to be in the day-to-day, period, right? So it's like when I look at the tax business, I've never done someone's tax returns. Like I'm not sitting on these tax strategy calls, but I own the business, and people trust it because of the brand, that we've built. With Pineda Media, the newest one, that one's a very hands-on thing for the entrepreneurs that we manage for their social media. Like we hop on a Zoom call with them for 3 hours at a time and pepper them with questions and try to coach them through speaking and creating great content. And then we edit it for them and, all this stuff. And it's I would say it's probably one of the more high maintenance things because like, this is their social media. This is their like personal brand and how they're, appearing to the world. So I think people are even more nitpicky with something like this.
Yeah.
And we've got people who are like, they like to help them and they like doing that stuff, but it ain't me.
So let me ask you this. So if you're starting these businesses and you're not the operator, presumably your main value add is the lead flow, right? Coming into the business.
Yeah, I think I have I would say there are 3 elements that are why people want to partner with me, right? So number one, yeah, the marketing side of things, like my own organic reach, like, or funneling them in from my other businesses, right? Because if somebody joins my education business, they need tax either way, right? So the fact that I own this business is a funnel to that business. And then my organic marketing will get traffic. So like that's obviously a huge thing. But, as I'm like starting to grow more in business, I'm starting to like try and get away from that because I can only promote so many things.
Yeah.
So, when people come to me now about partnership, I'm really not trying to be the promoter or the face. The second way that we really add value is just through like the actual strategy and consulting and the resources. Like the fact that we know how to build funnels and websites and ads and sales teams and hire, like we know all of that at a very high level. We know how to scale companies, right? So if you come to us, we're going to put the pieces in place to build machines, really, right? Like that's what I've built is a bunch of machines. And so we're going to turn your business into a machine, and it's going to be a machine that doesn't need my face on it. Like it can be a machine without me. So like people partner up for that reason. And then the third reason I would say is just capital, right? Like, I mean, we have capital. If like somebody's looking for an investment, and it makes sense, we'll do that. Right. Like our newest thing is called Pineda Partners because it's like we want to partner up with more businesses at this point. Like I don't want to necessarily start like everything that I own to this point. I've started from zero. And, it's like we can do it. We've proved it time and time again, but it's hard. Like it's easier to go take something established and blow it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So for the people listening to my podcast, some of them probably haven't started anything yet. So out of all the businesses that you've started and run, let's say you were to start over from complete scratch. What would be attractive to you today and something that you'd stick with for at least, let's say 3 to 5 years?
I mean, I love real estate. Look, as much as I said I didn't like it, I didn't like it as an agent, but I love it as an investor. It's an industry that anyone can get started on today. You don't need any kind of special skills or experience. You don't even need a lot of money. Like there are ways to do real estate without using any of your own money. And it's a skill that builds wealth. Like at the end of the day, you are going to build wealth through real estate if you hold it for the long haul, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, what I teach is there are really 3 pillars that you can build your wealth on. Number 1 is business, right? You could start a business and build it up and like that's going to make you money, okay? Number 2 is investments, okay? You can just become a very good investor, somebody who's savvy and like you make great deals and that's how you grow your wealth. The third is influence. So if you become great on social media and you have influence, you're going to build a ton of wealth. You're going to get opportunities. You're going to get just money flowing to you because attention is currency. So, at the end of the day, like if you can do just one of those, you'll become really wealthy. But if you could do a mix of those, you're just going to kill it.
Let's talk about the influence factor because I've seen you in a lot of places. I think you're on YouTube. I see you on TikTok all over the place. And you're pretty prolific. It looks like you're putting out multiple pieces of content per day. Is that accurate?
We put out about 40 to 50 pieces per day.
Okay, that's nuts. Let's talk about that. That sounds like a lot of time, but I presumably you probably produce one thing and you break it up into multiple pieces. So let's talk about your process.
Yeah, I mean, I probably spend 10 hours a week filming, if that. It's not a ton. And, that's that kind of output or input creates the output I'm talking about. I mean, because, if you think about it, right, like podcasts are like kind of my favorite thing to do. And I like it because it's informal. I don't have to prepare. I just talk and it's great. And then we cut those up into different clips and we post those across all the different platforms. They then take what I say and they turn them into tweets. They turn them into blog posts. Everything's coming from my mouth. It's just, they're taking what they think is great. And it's a machine. It's a machine like any other business of like, I put in what I got to put in and they do the rest.
So if you were starting out like you were before when you were kind of in debt and you had to borrow money and max out your credit cards, just walk me through the process from scratch. So let's say, would you start with a podcast?
So if you're broke and you're trying to gain influence or make money, like what's your goal?
Well, I think influence leads to money, right? So the first step would be to build that influence, right?
I've debated about this, because when I was broke 10 years ago, influence wasn't what it is today, right? Like influencers are getting, a lot more powerful than even most. So obviously I think it's a great tool, but what I would probably tell somebody who's broke is pick a tool that you're naturally good at, right? So, if you're a great deal maker and you're a great salesperson, like I think business is an amazing thing. You should start a business. If you're great crunching numbers and investments, everything else, maybe you should try and get in the investment world of real estate or stocks or whatever. If you're great on camera, you're charismatic and you've got some interesting things to say, I would say the number one thing in influence is being creative. Like if you're a creative person, then, influence is the route. I didn't start with influence. I started with just investing. I just bought real estate and that was how I, whatever. And then I started to learn how to run a business because of real estate. And then I started other businesses and then I got into influence later. And, it made influence so much easier because I had things to talk about. I had credibility at that point. So
sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't start from zero and just start making videos. You absolutely can. There are people who, crush it, who have no credibility yet. They're just great content creators. There's nothing wrong with that. You just got to own it. You just got to be like, yeah, this is my journey. And I'm trying these new things and I'm trying to make it and I'm documenting the journey. I think that's amazing. So, if I was broke, I would probably be doing a hybrid of trying to build a business, but I'm also going to document myself trying to build the business.
Your path, you mentioned you maxed out credit cards and you had to get some hard money loans. Would you have taken that path again? Like you mentioned investing, and that requires capital, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, 100%. I mean, I like where it turned out, right? But
yeah, it turned out great, but it's risky, right? I mean, let's say the downturn happened right after you did that. It would have been tough.
I actually don't think it was risky at all, and here's why.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So this was my mindset going into it, right? And I think a lot of young people struggle with this. So, Steve, how old are you?
I'm 48.
You're 48, and you got wife, kids?
Yep.
Yeah. So, if you were to lose it all today, it'd be very, catastrophic. And so, as you get...
I don't think so, actually, because once you know how to make money, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, you'll remake it and you'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
But, whatever. It'll suck for a period of time.
Yeah.
And
sure. Yes.
Whatever. The thing is, as you get older and you make more money and you have more to lose, then yes, things get riskier because you have more to lose, even though your skills are so much better.
Right.
And also, too, the value of whatever you're investing in or putting your time towards, every dollar you build has less value to you. Your first $1 million is so important compared to if you've made 100 million. What's another million? It doesn't really matter. So, it's just this kind of weird thing where money is very important to you early on and it becomes less important to you later. And therefore, you shouldn't try to maximize return later. You should maximize risk. And, it's like, man, adding another dollar doesn't really matter. I'd rather just make sure I don't lose this money. So That's something to think about. But when I was starting out, I was young. I was 24 years old. My wife was 21. And that's when we got married. And, we're broke, right? And so for me, it's like, all right, well, we're broke. Let's look at the scenarios here. We can continue on the path we are currently on, which will lead to continuing being broke. So that's 100% certainty. Or we take a risk and we try this house flipping thing. Now, what happens if we try this house flipping thing? Well, there's lots of scenarios that can happen. As an optimist, the best case scenario is we flip it, we go make 25 grand and it's going to be great, right? That's the best case. What's the maybe likely case? What could happen? Well, maybe we buy it and we realize we screwed up on some things and we break even or we lose a little bit of money, right? And so it's all right, there's probably a 70, 80% chance that I'm either breaking even or doing good. That's probably, and remember, I was a realtor before, so I still had real estate experience. I understood values. Then there's probably a 20% chance of catastrophe where things hit the fan. I totally bought wrong. I can't sell the house and I'm going to go lose 20 grand or I'm going to get foreclosed on or, I'm going to lose the house and now I'm 50 grand in debt. And that is what it is. All right. Well, let's just think what happens at this worst case scenario at 24 years old. I just freaking declare bankruptcy and I start fresh in 2 years. Whoop-de-doo, you know?
Right.
So to me, I had nothing to lose at that point. And
that makes sense.
I had everything to gain. And this is what I try to tell young entrepreneurs all the time. They're like, dude, I cannot afford to buy your coaching program or somebody else's. I don't have the money. And I'm like, you have credit cards? Can you get debt? They're like, oh, well, yeah, but I can't go into debt. And I'm like, dude, what do you think real estate is?
Yeah.
Real estate, you're going into debt. A credit card is no different than a mortgage or a student. Debt is debt. It's just a matter of how you use the debt. If you use the debt to go make more money, whether it's through education or an investment or a business, then it's not debt. It's just, it's a tool. And so, I tell them, I'm like, well, what's the worst that happens? You're in debt and you didn't get what you needed to get done. Like, I know what we teach is legit. So it's on you if you don't do it, right? But if you make a mistake, at least you'll have made a mistake and you'll have learned from it. And then you'll be able to go do it better the next time, right? Like you will now have experience and you'll be able to figure it out again. And we've had students who do that. Like, not everyone makes money their first deal, right? Like, they make mistakes.
Sure.
And they're totally like, the most successful people are like, dude, this is great. Like, I'm glad I went through that. Now I know. And so, yeah, when you're young and you're broke, you should go into debt. You have nothing to lose. 0 is the same as negative 10,000 or negative.
I agree with that, actually. I agree with that. Do you have kids, Ryan?
Yeah, I have a third on the way.
Okay, wow. All right. So just by nature of the content that I put out and the fact that my blog and podcast is called My Wife Quit Her Job, I actually attract a lot of females over the age of 35 who have kids. So that advice is great for someone young.
Yep.
Let's say you're broke and you have kids and responsibilities. How would your advice change?
Yeah. And this is what I wanted to bring up. As you get older, your risk tolerance becomes more strict, right? That's just natural. When you have more responsibility with kids and a spouse and everything else, like, you can't make the same reckless decisions that you would make when you're single or when you don't have kids and you're not young. So in my particular situation, I felt like I had no risk, even though most people wouldn't have did that.
Yep.
Now, when you're talking about a 35-year-old woman who's got a few kids and does her husband work? Like, I mean, there's context to every situation.
Sure.
I don't
know. Yeah, of course. Of
right?
course. Yeah.
But I would think, if you're married and your husband's working and you're staying at home, because that's the title of the podcast. My wife's a stay-at-home mom too. You trying a side hustle, I think, has no risk, right? Like,
I agree.
Why are you not, if money is tight for the family and your husband works a normal W-2, that it is what it is, then there's so many ways to make money online and still be a stay-at-home mom. Like, I don't think there's any reason you can't try and put some effort into a side hustle. And I think it has very little risk.
So the question is, what would you try? Because you've done a lot of things, right?
It goes back to one of those 3 pillars, right? It's like, okay, you're either going for influence, you're going to start a business, or you're going to start investing.
But presumably you wouldn't have taken that hard money loan now with 3 kids, right? And you just had a regular job.
I mean, I'm a risky person by nature, and I've
oh, you are? Okay.
Well, also too, I've never had a job, so I don't even know. Like, it's just it's a scenario that would never play out. The only job I ever had was with the Oakland A's when they signed me, and that was it. Everything else, like, I was hustling. But look, if I had a job and 3 kids and, we were living paycheck to paycheck, my wife wasn't working, let's like put myself in like the, maybe a standard situation that people have to make a decision on. For me personally, okay, I always look at the future. I'm very like, man, where am I going? If I'm not on the path of where I want to be, and I know that this current path I'm on is going to lead me to something I don't want to be, then I cannot stay on this path. There's no reason to stay on this path. And so if you're at a job, and I don't want to say a dead end job, but like, if you're at a job that's like, this is not going to be the path for where you want your family to be, then it is your obligation to switch the path. Now, you don't have to switch and just like quit your job tomorrow. I'm not saying that, but I am saying you need to start forging a new path as you start to transition, because your current path is wrong. So, if I was this guy who was working a job and paycheck to paycheck, I didn't want my wife to work because I wanted her to take care of the kids and everything else, then I would be spending every waking moment that I had available to me, like learning a new skill. Okay. And whatever that skill was, content, real estate, side hustle, online business, I don't give a crap. You want to flip couches? Cool. But, you got to want it bad enough. I don't care who you are today. I mean, if you work 60 hours a week at your current job, I mean, cool. You can still learn skills. How many hours are in a week? I don't know, but you got time to go learn new skills. And so that's what it's going to take. You're going to have to learn a new skill one way or the other if you want to get out of your situation. It's not going to magically change. You can't just hope for a raise. You can't just, you got to forge a path, and there's lots of tools available.
Yeah. The reason why I'm asking all these questions is I get them all the time. So I run a podcast, I have a YouTube channel, blog, and I also run an e-commerce store with my wife that sells handkerchiefs. And I'm always asked, so out of all the things that you do, which one would you do in this certain situation? And my answer usually is like the content side can take a while.
Yep.
Right. I say maybe 2 or 3 years if you want to go down that path. If you need money sooner than that, then just selling something, like you mentioned, deal flow, whatever it is, will make you money sooner, or even just freelancing or stuff like that.
Yep.
So that's what I was trying to get out of you is like, you've done a lot of different things. Like they're all pretty disparate.
Yeah.
And the question is like, if someone came to you and asked that exact question,
yeah,
what would you have done? Or what would you advise them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because like, I'm not a one size fits all guy. That's why I keep saying, like,
yeah,
well, hey, I mean, look, if you're good looking and you're charismatic and whatever, like you're going to do better at content than the guy who's not. Right. So
it's true.
Like,
absolutely true.
Everyone has a unique skill set. If you're introverted and you hate sales, you're not going to be a deal maker. Probably. Like, so you shouldn't be thinking about deal making. You should be thinking about freelancing and doing back end stuff for people. So like, it's so hard, but I forgot you asked me the question of would I have maxed out my credit cards in that hypothetical situation? And the answer is yes. I mean, the answer is like, I got to forge a new path. Let's say I learned the skill of flipping houses. I'm confident in my ability, even though I've never done it. I think I know enough. I mean, I have to take the risk at this point. And the reality is if I fail, I'm going to learn something. And yeah, I might, put us in huge credit card debt and whatever, but go bankrupt. Like 2 years from now, you'll be back fine. The same. You're all once again. I don't think they're in much of a different situation. You're still, paycheck to paycheck. You probably already have some current debt, anyways. Like it's really not that big of a difference. Like I said, 0 is the same as negative 50,000. Like they're the same.
So it's so interesting, Ryan. Like we're pretty different personality wise. Maybe it's just because the way I was brought up, just more conservative. You have a lot more risk tolerance than I do, which is really interesting. Actually, I find it pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about automation. So you're able to do all of these things in a short period of time because you have these systems in place.
Yeah.
What are these systems, for example, that you have, and what are some of your philosophies on that matter?
I mean, we got a lot of systems in place. Yeah, and also speaking of risk tolerance too, like my family lost everything. My mom was a realtor. She got killed or not killed, but like, her business got destroyed in 2008 when,
I remember that.
And so like, she never recovered. My dad had a convenience store, and I think he had like 2 or 3 and then lost them all, never recovered. Thankfully, my dad works for me now as a project manager and, I've been able to retire him. He likes to work, so it's fine. But, they were always anti-risk because they had been burned so bad. And so my mom never wanted me to get into real estate. She was like, go get a safe government job, like do those things and whatever.
That's what my parents said too.
Yeah. I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm not going to do that. And so, yeah, I've always been a risk taker, not from influence or but just like, bro, if you want to accomplish anything big, you got to take risk. And if you choose not to take risk, you're taking a risk that you think everything will stay status quo, which is not going to happen. AI is going to take your job before status quo stays the same, right? So you should be always on like the innovation side. But anyways, how do we handle everything today? I mean, just great people, man. I mean, at the end of the day, I am just very trusting of my staff and team. Like, I believe they're going to get things done. I believe that, we've got good processes to make sure they're doing their jobs. And I believe they're smart enough to fix processes when they're, not working the right way. It takes a lot of trust to have the right systems in place. But, every business has like SOPs and everything else that you need for anybody to come in and do the job.
What's funny is, and the way I operate is I'm a little anti-employee, kind of like the opposite of you, actually. I used to be an engineering director, and I had a lot of people under me, and like they were great workers, but I remember I hated dealing with like the emotional side of management.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's why I've run all my stuff with as few employees as possible. And I used to be an engineer, so I code up all my own stuff. And most of my stuff is automated with machines and code.
Got it.
And we're living in a golden age, right, of AI.
Yep.
Like you should be able to, in theory, in the next few years, automate even more stuff. What is your philosophy on those things? So you mentioned you're very trusting. Have you ever been burned before? Can you talk about like the overhead of managing so many people? You said there's 90 people in your organization?
Yeah. So I think a few things, right? So one is, have I been burned before? Oh yeah. Freaking every week. Some stupid happens, right?
Okay.
Somebody doesn't close a deal they should have closed. Somebody pisses off a customer. That's what running a business is,
Yeah.
McDonald's screws up every freaking day, right? But they're still McDonald's and, they're good. So look, at the end of the day, no big thing has ever been done by a small team or just one person, right? Like you want to create big impact, you need a lot of people. That's just what it comes down to, and especially with any business, like with scale just comes just doing more of what you currently do. So it's like, if I want to sell more, I need more sales guys. It's not like I have to reinvent the script or anything. I just got to increase the inputs of, hey, how do we get more leads? And then now that we have more leads, how do we handle those leads? Well, I need more sales guys, right? So, in order to scale, it always requires more human capital. And,
let me ask you this.
Go
on. What is your reason for wanting to scale so large? Like, what is your reason to be in business in the first place? Like, what do you value the most?
Man, there's a lot of philosophy behind everything. So like, there's 3 stages to like making money. The first is you're just trying to provide for yourself. And that's where most people are, unfortunately. The second is, once you've provided for yourself, it's, man, how do I provide for those who are close to me? My parents, my whatever, right? And then once you've done that, the third is, man, all right, well, how do I really just add value to the world, at this point? Because everything else that's close to me is done. So, for me, I'm in that stage 3. And, you were asking me about my book and everything behind it. I'm like, yeah, I'm just giving it away for free, basically. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, it's really here, let me help the world type play.
Sure.
And when I think about social media and the businesses I'm building, the one thing we teach is like reverse engineering from the big goal to figuring out what you should be doing on a day-to-day basis. So like, for me as a Christian, my big goal is just bringing more people to Jesus. And so like, when you read The Wealthy Way, there's so many elements of faith in there. We just started a new company called Wealthy Kingdom for Christian entrepreneurs. My content has a lot of faith-based elements in it. And for me, I just realized like, there's not a lot of Christian entrepreneurs out there that are like have influence, and many are actually anti-Christian. There's lots of atheists, there's Scientology, there's like just people who whatever, right? And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, man, if this is what every young entrepreneur is watching, and yeah, they're learning great business tactics and all this, but they're going to be screwed for eternity because nobody's telling them the truth, that's a huge problem. And so, I've kind of taken it on myself of like, look, the more successful I become in business, the more that more people are going to listen to me because of the success. Then I can tell them the truth of what's actually important. And I can have authority to say it, because it's not like I'm some broke guy telling you that you should do that. It's like, no, dude, like I've done everything you want to do. It's not as important as you think. This is far more important. social media is like the biggest way to get any message out today. That's why influence is so important. So business influence, and then, the more money you make, right, you can fund your initiatives that are important to you. So, I've got enough crap for me. Okay. So how do I fund, building churches and mission trips and all these other things that need funding? Because I believe, as a Christian, we're all part of the body, meaning we all have a separate role to play. And so it's like, my role may not be to be the pastor. My role may not be to be the missionary, but somebody's got to finance those people because that is their role. And so if I have this skill set, once again, goes back to skill set. I'm such a big proponent of understanding who you are and what your skill set is and what your natural God-given gifts are. If you can know those, then you can understand what your purpose is for using those skills. If you're a freaking rock star salesperson, be a rock star salesperson. Don't try to be an accountant, So yeah, everything stems back to the end goal of why I'm on this earth and, what God's calling me to do. And right now it's like, dude, to me, it would be disobedient to just take it easy and chill. That's why you'll never hear me talk about retirement. It's there's nowhere in the Bible that retirement is discussed. It's not a thing, right? We're meant to work. And if I was just to be I got enough passive income now that I can go live on the beach and drink pina coladas the rest of my days and play golf, what a waste of talent, And that is not what God called us to do. So I'm motivated every day to go do things and use the gifts.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm never retiring either. The only thing that I've been running into problems with is, I don't know how old your kids are. My kids are teenagers now, and there's a lot of stuff, so I find myself they're always my top priority, and it takes a lot of time and you just can't do everything.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, also, I don't like dealing with the emotional headaches of managing. I don't know how you do it. I'm just trying to learn how you're doing it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want 80 people.
Yeah.
I definitely don't want 80 people.
Yeah. That was the first half of your question. So here's the thing. I don't want to manage 80 people either, dude. I know. So, it goes back to the visionary integrator role. So this became famous in EOS, and, at the end of the day, I'm a visionary through and through. I am not a manager, which is why I didn't want to be a realtor. That's being a manager. So I'm not at the office right now. I am not managing the people working on a day-to-day basis. I don't run meetings. I'm not sitting in any of this stuff. I'm out here creating, inspiring, thinking of big ideas and vision. And that's what pushes the company to be because basically the company can only be as big as I envision it, right? Nobody else is going to, push it forward, right? But there's lots of people I can find to help execute my vision and manage the day-to-day. And so, I don't manage anyone, truthfully. The way we're structured right now is I have a parent company called the Pineda Company, and we have a C-suite. So I have a COO, CFO, CTO, all that. And their job is to support all the sister companies in the portfolio. And so my COO checks in with the COO of, Wealthy Investor. And he says, hey, how's everything going? Are we hitting our numbers? Do we got to make any adjustments? Do we got to hire somebody? Do we got to fire somebody? He's doing all that stuff. I don't have those conversations. I walk in the office and there's new people there every week. I'm like, oh, who are you? I don't know. And then I've never talked to them. And then, I meet them because it's the COO's job to go hire them and manage them and fire them. And, if it's not working out. So I don't do any management at all, really.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Ryan. Hey, I want to be respectful of your time. Where can people find more about your book and all the different things that you do?
Yeah, I would say go to wealthyway.com to go get access to my book and a bunch of free courses and resources. That's kind of one of my biggest give backs to the world. So definitely check that out. And then, for finding me, I'm everywhere on social media. So if you just search Ryan Pineda, you'll find me. And, hopefully you like the content and it's valuable.
Cool. Well, Ryan, really appreciate your time, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.